Robbo, this wasn't a tragic accident. It was the final brutal chapter in a long, sad story of abuse and intimidation. Like most of the men in the squad, Robbo had never shown much interest in domestics. Those deaths usually found their way to my desk unless something made them worthy of the boy's attention. Press interest. The possibility of something other than the run-of-the-mill man beats woman, woman refuses to press charges, man kills woman pattern of so many domestic deaths. Violence against women was an accepted and intractable fact of human existence in their eyes. A great messy miasma in which the women seemed almost complicit in their own humiliation and death. Everyone agreed the perpetrators needed to be prosecuted, but it wasn't going to make anyone's career. Still, something in the way that mother crumbled in front of our eyes pressed the iron into Robbo's soul. He pursued that case like the consummate professional he is, interviewed everyone who'd ever crossed paths with the couple as well as past girlfriends and mates right back to school days. He'd built the strongest case I'd seen, put in more hours than he'd logged on his timesheet, and used his own car when the DCI suggested he'd burned too many resources on the case. When it went to trial, he'd asked me to sit in the court and update him. That's why I was there, watching Thomas Griffith Jones unpick the fabric of Robbo's case strand by strand in his inimitable style. Now I was crouched over him with my hand over his heart, trying to stop its failing beat from pushing the blood from his body. When the ambulance finally drove through the wrought iron gates to pull up beside us, it was a relief to surrender responsibility to the paramedic who kneeled on the tarmac opposite me. She checked for a pulse before lifting my jacket, looking at the growing pool of blood and shaking her head almost imperceptibly. I felt no sense of sadness. Perhaps this was what justice looked like outside our system. Then I thought of his family, his parents, and did he have a wife? Kids? As I stood to let the second paramedic drape a blanket over the body, I thought of my girls, of the call I hoped they'd never get, the call to tell them I'd been killed in the line of duty. Every life had value to someone. That's why I'd become a cop, why I'd worked my way up through the ranks to homicide. As the white waffle blanket slowly turned red, I noticed the onlookers for the first time. A crime scene crowd is a peculiar beast. Transformed from a group of individuals into a kind of collective consciousness, they moved with the fluidity of water as they pressed closer to get a better look. I might not have had much respect for the deceased in life, but that didn't mean I'd let his death become a circus. "Step back, please." I brandished my warrant card, and people reared back like vampires facing garlic. 2 squad cars drove in through the gates and stopped behind the ambulance with a screech of tyres. Uniformed officers spilled out onto the tarmac. I took what must have been my first full breath since the body had fallen. "Jesus, Hart, what have you done?" Peterson pushed past a uniform with his warrant card held high for all to see. Pocketing it, he ran his hands over his trademark slick short back and sides, sweeping wayward windblown hair back into place and grinning like the cat that got the cream. I followed his line of sight down to a bloody handprint on my skirt. "Fuck off, Peterson." "Who have we got here?" He reached for the blanket, but I pushed his hand away, trying to ignore the frisson of expectation that stirred the crowd. I leaned in so no one would hear and copped the full force of cigar smoke and whiskey residue from his clothes. Griffith Jones. Peterson reared back, eyes wide. "The lawyer?" I nodded. "Shit, yeah." Behind Peterson, the crowd turned as one to watch the forensics bus pull into the car park, closely followed by the coroner's van. It was finally beginning to look like a crime scene, with people in clean suits and booties erecting a privacy screen around the body and uniformed police laying out perimeter tape. "You the senior on scene?" A man wearing a white paper spacesuit and pale blue paper booties stuck his hand out to shake Peterson's. "That would be me. I was first on scene." I stepped forward and offered my hand. "Hart, Emilia Hart." I sensed Peterson bristle. "Scott Johnson. I'm the new medical examiner." Dr. Johnson nodded down at the body. "Anyone I should know?" I followed his gaze and pictured the deceased in court, commanding the room like a king. Against my better judgment, I felt a sting of sympathy for the empty shell at my feet. "Defence barrister, Griffith Jones." "Ah." He nodded as he snapped on a latex glove. The unspoken pact between police, forensics and prosecutors had been invoked.